Well, we just arrived at Columbia at the National Watching Clock Museum, standing in front of the School of Horology, which no longer exists. Just drove in from Winterthur, 2 great days, Winterthur NAWCC Combined Symposium, and we're going to head over to the auditorium now and set up for my Conservation Restoration Symposium this morning. Well, just a quick word here. We're just looking at the reconstructed tower, which we did here at the National Watch Museum in 1993. And as you can see inside, we have a wonderful E. Howard and Son tower clock movement from the 19th century, and it'll be striking in a few minutes. But I think we're running a bit short on time. Again, we're going to have to run into the auditorium and get set up. So let's get on with it. Let's go talk about conservation. Let's go. Okay, thanks for coming out, everyone. We had a great 2 days at Winterthur. I'd like to thank Steve, Noel, Mr. Frischman, and the staff here at the museum for helping getting this together. And I'm sure we're going to have a great lunch afterwards. Any questions about any of the presenters? The one drawback of the last couple of days is we don't get a chance to talk to everybody unless you caught them at a lunch or something. So if you have any questions maybe I can help you with, please let me know. But some of our stuff will overlap, obviously. We're going to talk a little bit about basically what's a conservator, restorer, how I got into this. If anyone has an interest, hopefully you do. I've been a furniture maker for about 35 years, and that's not here nor there. I stumbled into that, but doing a very high-end product, handmade, bench-made, of the Philadelphia Chippendale style. That went on for about 15 years until right after 2000, 2001, and the market just absolutely died. Throughout the 90s, I had a penchant for clocks. I've made numerous clock cases, tall clock cases, grandfather clocks, however we want to term them today, about 375 to date. That's a lot of clocks considering my shop turned out hundreds and hundreds of pieces of furniture, over 1,000 chairs, 500 beds plus, so just great numbers. I trained about 15 people under me, craftsmen, and 2000, 2001 came along, everything just absolutely stopped. No rhyme or reason, and still trying to figure it out today. So, and as you know, clock prices or horological prices have dipped on most items, particularly clocks. And I often say, a clock I bought in 2000 for my collection at 10,000, that same London maker has showed up in 11, 12, and 13 with a similar clock in a numbering system, and it's selling for $8, $9, and $1,100 today. It's absolutely shocking, which is probably not shocking to anyone here, but I still can't get over it. Having made these clock cases using old movements during the 90s and the late 80s, I find myself having to close down, so I came out to the school here for a year. So I went through clock and watch essentially here, and then I took off to the British Horological Institute, taking a number of short courses over there for about a year, apprenticeships throughout the UK. Came back, and I wanted to incorporate, I never wanted to get out of the decorative arts, so I'm all about preservation. So I looked at my options of preserving the furniture that my shop has been building for many, many years. So there's only two alternatives, generally speaking. It's Westdean College in Chichester, or it's the Eco-Boule / the Louvre Museum in Paris. So Paris was a little bit more palatable for me. Big city, easier to get around. Now, maybe I should have gone back to Westdean, but anyway, I still would love to go take their horological conservation program. That to me, it is the ultimate. But nevertheless, I got a graduate degree at the Louvre Museum in wooden artifacts and objects of art. And today I'm going to go over the different genre of disciplines that I honed my skills for when I was in Paris. And it was a joint process with the Eco-Boule, which is the oldest trade school in the world. It dates back to about 1770. So if you consider the French have been building furniture since the 1610s, 1620s, by the time they hit the 18th century, everything's falling apart. So they've seen it right to set a school up for restoration. And the school still exists today. And they put young people through, starting in 6th grade, in this school, and these are boys and girls. So sometimes I was in a class with a 7th and 8th grader to learn the necessary basis that I was supposed to be learning. So it was very interesting, very interesting. But nevertheless, the Eco-Boule gives you the background, the dexteral part that if you don't have, and the Louvre gives you the scientific background. But my background was already scientific to a degree. I have a degree in microbiology right out of college in food science. So, and I thought that would always be lost on me and never utilize it. But little did I know, the physics and the chem were going to come back, and this whole thing would be a 360, but it took many, many years. Too many years. So nevertheless, I did the Parisian thing. After that, I did a series of small stints around Europe. I lived in Venice for 6 months, Florence for 3 months. Venice was gilding, Florence was tapestry restoration, Germany, Switzerland. So I've been around the block a little bit and spent a lot of time, but it was great. So a total about 5 years touring around Europe and trying to get the creme de la creme in restoration. So this was all after I had the horological training. So obviously at this point I'm begging to get back, and my clients of furniture thought that I fell off the map, literally. You know, just been non-existent for 5 years, and I've had very tight relationships. What worked out well, though, these clients that I built these high-end copies for over the years had a lot of great antiques and clocks. So I'm coming back, and it's almost, you know, instant work right off the bat. So, any questions? Anybody has any questions? Or? So this is a little bit difficult because we are under somewhat of a time constraint. I want to show you some things I can't demonstrate. There's not adequate time, but I want to show you some of these items that I used to do what I do and where I've been. Okay. One I don't have on the agenda that I have brought with me is this wine-based tall clock, dating in 1770s from London. This case has been sent over to China for decoration. So this is the real deal. This is chinoiserie at its highest point. We know that because this has Urushi lacquer on it. And, you know, to determine these kind of things, I do scientific testing to determine, you know, the various layers, just like we saw at Winterthur. And this guy has Urushi. If you're not familiar with Urushi lacquer, it is a tree sap. It's a very deadly tree sap. And I was in Japan for a short stint of 4 months to learn this lacquering from some masters there, which have been doing it for over 5,000 years. The Urushi tree is the sumac tree. And it's the same sumac as we have here to get poisoned. And it's very dangerous, and they lost hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people over the years in the Asian countries just handling this stuff. They had no idea. If you re-amalgamate this finish with water, if you go to sand it down, and because you have environmental contaminants on the top, and you can create a slurry with water, if you get one drop on you, I was covered my chest and my legs. Emergency room in Japan, shots. So within 5-6 hours, it's so concentrated, it's 100 times more than your little sumac plant that we have here. So very dangerous stuff, and I thought I was covered enough, but my gloves didn't go up far enough on the arms. So what we have here is we have, the urushi is still available. Obviously, if you're in the Asian countries, it's readily available. But today, and it's no use me picking it up, it's on the table in the corner. Just don't touch it. It's a small tube, and it did break coming over, so we don't want to touch that at all. But it comes in clear, and when you put it on, the basic urushi, it goes black. So black lacquering in the 18th century was very easy with this. So you cover the whole base with the clear urushi sap, essentially, with a brush, and when it dries, but it takes 3 to 6 months to dry. And conversely, it dries in wet conditions, not dry conditions. So you want to have the humidity in the room, relative humidity, maybe 70, 80, 90%, and it has to dry slow, so the outer layers don't dry too quickly, so the inner layers are drying from the inside out. So I purchased this clock about 10 years ago, and it was missing a door. So I got an old piece of wood. By the hood, the car was always bringing it in on a time basis. So this is my restoration of a missing door. And you're welcome to take a look at this. We can actually pass it around if you like, whatever's easier for our time constraints. So I'm using a combination, which they did, a combination of gesso to get the raising. And as you know, the dichotomy, some people use the term Japanning, and Japanning is used in England essentially as a copy of the chinoiserie look or feel. And in the beginning, they would ship the cases actually over to China and Japan. There's no telephones. They may not come back for 3 or 4 years. The majority of them never came back. All kinds of case furniture went over. And then they thought, oh, we'll send our craftsmen over. We'll build the furniture there. They can watch the process, and then they ship it back. And that didn't work. So then they started copying the English Japanning, which is shellac-based or resin-based. And basically theirs is shellac-based. And you always know that it's Japanning because it starts cracking. You'll have a multitude of cracks and flakes. So that is Japanning on the English version. This stuff could be from 1740. There's no cracks, there's no voids. We can throw it over the river here in Susquehanna, and it's not going to affect it. It's solid. It's quite the amazing stuff. So anyway, so you can take a look at this. This is the door that I've created, pulling motifs out of the whole thing. And so again, at this point being the restorer, the conservator, there's a lot of guesswork here on what was on here, but it's just taking an amalgamation of what's, the motifs that are on this piece.
So how did you get the gold on the door?
Well, first thing is you're putting the urushi lacquer, and it's got to dry. I had to cure for almost a year. And the gilding is put down by putting a very thin coat of urushi, and I'm using gold powders here. So we said it dries black, but when we infiltrate the top layer of the urushi, we're creating a stickiness of gold there. So that's why we do it. And I can actually create raising using the urushi as it's drying, but it involves a lot of every day coming back because it tends to sink. So come back, you want to build it up again. 3 or 4 days later, it sinks. So they actually incorporated gesso in here too. And at times, if I'm going to decorate something at the end, or when they did it, they used gold leaf, okay? And they used just a wash of animal glue, rabbit skin glue, and just a tad bit of alcohol, and they put the gold leaf down, okay? And a lot of this is done by gold leafing the whole thing, and then a scratch pattern through. So scratching through the black below. So that's the secret for this. So, and I've had this for 10, 12 years. I've never hung the door yet. That's the old adage, there's no kitchen cabinets in the house, right? A cabinet maker. So anyway, that was a side note. So that's our talk about urushi lacquer. And I'm sure everybody knows about gilding. Processes of gilding, there's different types of gilding. I'm going to do a little bit of reading here. I think the best way to do it, if everyone wants, and I'll get some feedback, maybe everyone wants to come up to the table so I do one thing at a time. So we talk a little bit about it, just take a look at what I have here. Does that work, or what's everybody's feeling? Instead of just one mass thing at the end and confusion, what's this, what's that? How do you feel about that?
Do you want to come up there?
Well, no, I'll do some. We'll just do a little bit of a talk here. I'll do some reading. I got 20-some pages here. So the term gilding covers a number of decorative techniques for applying fine gold leaf and powder to surfaces such as wood, stone, or metal, and give a thin coating of gold. And I kind of look at this as actually painting, you know, whatever the coating is, where you're just using gold. You can be veneering something, but in this case, it's covering a substrate. In this case, we're using gold. A gilded object is called gilt, where the metal is gilded. Okay? It is traditionally silver in the West. So a lot of gilders here used silver in the 18th century, and they colored it gold by using various colors of shellac and pigmentation. Okay, so popular, if you look at a lot of Boston pieces at times, it's not actually gold leaf, it's silver leaf that has been shaded. Okay? So you learn this by, you know, again, your various analysis we do and looking at the various layers. There was also bronzes used, which was bronze powders. People would take files and they would gray down and use these powders. The problem with the powders, the bronze, well, and the brass, if brass powders used, it will oxidize. It will turn dark, and at times it'll turn green. So if you can imagine that if somebody did this restoration using these bronze or powders, the whole bloody thing could have shades of green. And I've seen that. They say, what's happening here? And the first time it's taken many of us in our lab or, you know, in our studios to figure this out, a lot of issues, you know, what have people using? And many of the situations being a restorer or conservator is figuring what was done in the past. And even with clocks, okay, clock mechanisms. I mean, when I'm working with an 18th century mechanism, probably 60–70% of the time it's undoing bad, really uneducated, bad dexterity type repairs. So methods of gilding include gluing the gold down, chemical gilding, and electroplating. In horological aspects, we see bronze durée, which is the mercury application of gold. When I was in Paris, I actually rented from the individual who was the leading metal gilder in Paris or in the world. He's done everything for the Getty. So in my tenure there, 3 years, I saw a whole series of people, from docents coming over to organizational people from the Getty. And unfortunately, he was doing it right on the street corner. We had this little venue, studio is about 8 by 20 feet wide, and he puts a fan outside, he blows it outside. And I rented an apartment from him, I'm in the back, so I just keep blowing it out front. The mercury, so it was not good. We also have another term called parcel gilt, if you're not familiar with that. A lot of Chippendale mirrors, which just maybe have a portion or parcel of the object gilded. It can be anything, it can be a horological object also. So gilding has been around for about 2,500 years. The Romans have done it, the Egyptians have done it. What concerns us with the case is water gilding. And I can explain maybe a little bit better if we come down the front, much better than reading this out. First I'll stand up here with this guy if I come down. So when I'm teaching a class of gilding, we usually do a frame. This is a week-long class. Okay, so we take some old wood, and here we're utilizing 18th century wood. We're utilizing sliding dovetails. Okay? Sliding dovetails. So this is in the French style. So if anyone's trying to sell you an antique frame and it has these guys in, this is French, not Italian or not American. But anyway, we continue to do that. And these joints, these miters will never separate. So what we're doing here essentially is we're covering with a plaster of Paris, or as they term it, gesso. But when they're using gesso, it's just calcium carbonate. I'm talking too fast, just ask me questions. I'm always used to time constraints in the studio wherever we're in. So the essential thing is the wood is rough, and we need a metal, smooth type substrate. So the objective is this frame to look like metal when we're done. That's the end game, to see it from a distance, okay? To look like it's all gold. So the gesso gives us that base. And throughout the entire process of gilding, of water gilding, again, this is only used for interior use, never exterior use. Because obviously, it's water-based, it's not thermo, so another drop of water is going to re-amalgamate the surface, which we don't want. So, in essence, we're using rabbit skin glue, which is a very, very hard, high tensile strength glue, but yet it's very ductile, and it's very pliant. So it'll stretch a lot with the expansion of the wood without breaking, and it'll hold the molecules of the calcium carbonate together as the wood expands and contracts. So through the entire process of gilding, we use rabbit skin glue and wood. Okay. So we mix our gesso up, which I'm showing you a container of gesso here, which I don't use. Some of my contemporaries here use that. It's not proper. It's acrylic based. You can really not sand it. So we're using actually limestone that's been graded down here. So that is an option. Some people use it. I don't use it. I'm here just to show you that. You dab this on. You put about 24 coats, and you'll see a couple mops or brushes, very stiff, almost like a stippling brush, and it gets stippled hard on here, 24 coats. And I need to do this in 8 hours because I need two things happening here. I need a mechanical bond and I need a chemical bond, okay? And without either one, this thing is going to start delaminating in a number of years. So when I pass this around to you, this is a good thing just to touch and feel. So the application here could be for clock columns or Connecticut clocks, or I've seen some English clocks that are heavily carved from 18th century, George III, that are totally gilded, and they're only gilded wood, and this would be the application for that. I use it today for a lot of frames, a lot of capital touch-ups on certain clocks and things like that. So I don't use it on a very large scale today. In the period, they would have, could be in Philadelphia or Paris or London, they'd have a distributor, a boutique that would sell shark skin and stingray skins. And a baby skin of 3 months old is going to be very soft, the equivalent of 400 to 600 grit sandpaper. And an old stingray of 6-7 years could be a 120 grit sandpaper. So they sold these in gradations, they were all flat, and that was your sandpaper of the day. So the 18th century, that's how the 18th century gilder worked. In 1750 in Paris, there was almost 1,500 gilders. It's hard to believe. Today, there's only 6. There's 6 legitimate. I'm talking about idea of conservator, restorer, or craftsman. And my ideal in those 3 genres are someone who can adequately support themselves in a good lifestyle and don't have to kill themselves working, and they do a world-class product. So there's only about 6 to 15 left in Paris today. Since I've been away, maybe it's multiplied by a few, but not many, because there's not a great calling for this type of art, unfortunately, which